You're listening to WUSB Stony Brook 90.1 FM. Welcome to Uncritical Thinking, a program where I interview interesting people. I'm your host, Bruce Starshuk. Today, I'll be talking with Philip Daly. He is an expert in fencing. Nope, not the wooden or vinyl fencing that you see in your neighborhood. I'm talking about the sport of fencing. Stick around, and you and I will both learn a lot about this fascinating sport and man. We'll be back after a short break. Well, I'm here with Philip Daly, and Philip, thank you so much for giving up your time to do this interview with me.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, you are involved with a fencing club, and without getting too much into that, because we're going to be talking about it, what exactly is your relationship to this fencing club?
The fencing club is a 501c3 nonprofit. I am the director and head coach of the nonprofit. It was started by my wife and myself back in September of 2022, and we're self-funding it. We're lending the nonprofit money to purchase equipment, to rent facilities, and we're doing that at an interest-free rate.
Now, I looked at your biographicals, and you started fencing at 12, and that was curious to me because kids play baseball and football and all sorts of other things, but how do you start fencing at age 12?
Well, my older brother, Michael, started fencing. And I used to tell Michael when we were young that anything he could do, I could do better.
Sure.
So I had to start fencing. And that became a lifelong passion, obsession for myself. My brother no longer fences, but he fenced for many years.
Well, then I have to push the question on to him. Why did he start fencing?
I think he was looking for a sport. My brother Michael wasn't tall. He wasn't, as they say, a physically gifted athlete. It was the 90% desire in him and 10% talent. He had scoliosis. He had the curvature of the spine. He took up long distance running, and he did well at that. And he was looking for his niche in life, and he found it in fencing.
Now, where does a young kid like your brother go to take up fencing? I mean, were there schools or?
Sure. So now we go back to my fencing grandfather, and that's a man named Tom Kokoris. Tom passed away. Tom was an assistant principal at Center Ridge High School. He had started the fencing program in Suffolk County at Newfield High School, and the fencers that he had continued his legacy and began coaching in high schools, and they were teachers and high school coaches. Center Ridge High School, the school I went to and my brother went to as well, they offered fencing. My brother Michael fenced, I fenced, and I had several other brothers who followed us and fenced as well. So it became a family tradition. That
what year about was this?
So 1973, I entered high school. I was there to 77. Tom Kokoris, I think, started high school fencing in Suffolk County around like the 1960s, I want to say. He went to NYU. He was not a fencer. He took up fencing in college, and he fell in love with it. Tom continued. He refereed. We became friends later on in life. I had one coach who coached against me in high school, Van Wallison. He coached at Newfield High School for over 30 years. Van subsequently worked for us in our fencing business. He would travel the country with us and work. So it becomes a real tight niche community. And Tom subsequently went up to, I believe it was Needham, New Hampshire. I believe there was a YMCA up there. Yeah. And Tom started coaching at the YMCA in his like 70s. He just loved the sport. He called me up and said, "Phil, send me some of your old fencing equipment." I said, "Tom, it's so old, it won't work anymore. It's falling apart." But yeah, so he was a lifelong enthusiast of the sport, and he just continued on.
Now, when you guys were involved in high school, it seems to me it was a very esoteric sport. I mean, I never heard of it. Any other schools doing it? Were there other schools doing it? Was there competition?
Sure. Yeah, there were about 10 high school schools in Suffolk County that did it. There was Comac North, Comac South. They subsequently merged into one high school and one team. Islip had a team. I recently learned that Bayshore at one point had a team. Islip no longer does. Bayshore no longer does. Someone told me that Hop did, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. But Walt Whitman, Huntington, um, Newfield, Comstock had a team. That team folded. Ward Melville now has a team. So in the 70s, there were 10 high school fencing teams in Suffolk County. Today, there are roughly 10 high school fencing teams in Suffolk County. The difficulty is finding somebody who wants to teach it, a district that understands its value, and then having coaches that can coach. That in our nonprofit is one of our initiatives. We have a high school teaching fencing coach scholarship we give. We just gave one to Lindenhurst High School. Mr. Eller is coming to our club. He can come for a year free of charge. He's a teacher there. He's the high school fencing coach. And for a year, he can, basically suck our brain, learn everything we know about fencing and go on to teach it.
Now, you mentioned your brother was small. And
Yes.
one of my questions, what physical traits are necessary? Like in wrestling, you wrestle against people based on weight class. How are competitors set up in fencing?
So there's three disciplines in fencing. There used to be a fourth that was called long stick, and it was fenced in the Olympics. It was actually fenced by Teddy Roosevelt at one point, but that had its day and it was quickly gone. The three disciplines that remain are foil, epee, and saber. Now, epee was the dueling weapon, and contrary to popular belief, the objective of epee was not to kill your opponent, but rather to render a facial scar on them. At that time, men thought it was really honorable to have a scar. So they would go out and they would duel. And then someone figured that, you know what, if we're going to duel, we should practice first. And they invented foil. Foil became the practice weapon for epee. So in epee, the whole body is target. And there's what they say is no right away. It's hit or be hit. But that can also be looked at as the ultimate right away. You have to clear your opponent's point. You have to make sure you're not being hit while you're hitting them. In foil, the torso is target and there's a right away. If I go first, you have to stop me. You have to block me. A lot of people don't realize that fencing is a martial art. There is defensive moves, offensive moves. If you participated in Taekwondo, your body stance is in one direction. If you fence, you transpose that body direction. Gene Kelly, the famous dancer, was a saber fencer. And there's a video out there of him speaking about blading his body. This is the way you stand. This is the way you blade your body. You blade your body for less target. And then there was saber. Saber was generally fenced by men on horseback in the military, or the occasional woman that snuck in and represented herself as a male at that time. And they would get on the horse, and the target was set up that you wanted to kill or injure your opponent, your enemy. Basically, injuring was better. By injured you became a casualty. You became somebody that required medical attention. It was more of a drain on them. So the target was set at the hip and above. The arms were target. The head was target. You didn't want to hurt the horse. The horse was a valuable military commodity, like a tank or a jet today. So you wanted to eliminate your opponent and catch it. There are countries that take credit for developing and perfecting the weapon, and it's just their personal wish. But the Hungarians were pretty substantial in saber. They're the ones who really kind of perfected that.
So now when people used epee, is it epee?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's got a point on it and you're thrusting it, and people must have died.
So, yeah, there's a lot of, in the history of the sport, there are casualties. There was a fencer where the epee went through the mass, punctured the eye socket, and went into the brain of the fencer. Over the years, they have really perfected the equipment, and it's measured in terms of newtons being units of force that were required for penetration. The equipment we use We purchase it new. It measures at 400 newtons, but it's listed at 350. You have a standard of 350, 800, and 1600. 800, 1600 Newton equipment is used internationally. The fencers are bigger, faster. They have more impact in their hitting. And it is really required at that level. And in the national levels, very few fencers possess that ability.
Yeah.
The blades are made now, they're forged, and they're forged that they break square rather than shard. Okay, so there's no tip to it. It's not like an ice pick. It breaks square. So the greater the surface, the less the chance of penetration. You can think of the fencing uniform like Kevlar, like a police officer's jacket.
Yeah.
An ice pick can go through that. The bullet won't. It's bigger. You do feel the blunt force of that. New York State currently says that fencing is equal to football as far as impact. I disagree with that. I think
But
that's a reach.
my question though